Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 17th of August 2014 and my name's Scott. Welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. Today's news. The Russian convoy carrying aid to eastern Ukraine reached the border in the last few days, and there's still allegations that not everything inside it, those lorries, are aid for the people of eastern Ukraine. Remains to be seen what happens next. Islamic militants could target people on the streets of Britain unless action is taken, David Cameron has warned. Sounds to me just again trying to scare people so they can introduce maybe some new laws and legislations to take away people's rights. Just keep the fear factor up. Basically, he said that a humanitarian response to IS, or is it ISIL, or is it ISIS? I've seen so many different names, including ISI, I think, as well. Seems to me they're trying to confuse people and trying to make it distance it from the rebel group that was connected to Al-Qaeda that was attacking Assad's forces in Syria, which the Western powers were actually funding. So there's a clear connection, which I think they're just trying to take away the connection by just changing the name like every couple of days by the looks of it. Anyway, Cameron says a firm security response was needed. So it looks like he's gearing up for a war. I mean, there's so many potential wars that are about to happen that who knows where it's the major one's going to be. Personally, I'm concerned not about ISIS, IS, ISIL, ISI, or whatever they're called. I'm more worried about what they're planning to do over here with the fear. You know, that it seems that they're actually planning something, and so they're probably planning legislation, or maybe they're going to plan more false flags to get more people involved in wars, so more people die. Listening to the radio today, there's already a fair amount of support for troops going in to Iraq. I was just listening to a popular radio station. Police in Missouri say a man is critically ill after being shot in the street. This was due to protests over the death of Michael Brown, the teenager who was shot by police. They didn't need to kill him, basically. It's a fairly common practice in the US, it seems, at the moment, whereby if you don't do as you're told immediately, that's good enough reason to kill you. So tensions are running high, there's been curfews, now someone else has been killed. You know, and it just shows also, I think, that there's tension in a lot of places across the world, and the idea of uprisings and riots and revolutions, it wouldn't take too much, really, would it? Other news this week, Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency spied on US Secretary of State John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, German media reports say, and Mr. Kerry and Hillary Clinton don't like the sound of that. I mean, they don't like being spied on themselves, of course. Actually, I mean, I bet if John Kerry was spied on and the results were given to the media, I bet there's a few interesting things we'd find out about him. It's just children's games, basically, tit for tat, like you spied on us, we spied on you. Other news this week, there's been lots of viruses and diseases breaking out, more fear factor. Again, maybe they're going to bring in vaccinations or legislation. This is the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa, which is, there's been a lot of fear over that. 1,000 people have died, or I think there were some reports 2,000 in total. But you know, millions of people, or sorry, hundreds of thousands of people die from malaria, but there's not the same media fear spread about that, or there's far more people that do die in accidents on the road, but this is just being blown up out of proportion. I mean, at some point they may well create a virus that wipes hundreds of thousands of people out, but it won't be because of natural causes, I don't think. The UK paedophile scandal amongst celebrities and political leaders continues, with Cliff Richard being arrested. He's the UK's supposedly squeaky clean Elvis-style pop icon who sold millions of records. He's been investigated on one charge at the moment, connected to a Billy Graham event. But it's likely if there's no cover-up that he'll be linked to the Elms guest house scandal. Apparently he used a false name back in the 80s, I think, where and this was a guest house where the rich and famous used to go and take advantage of young boys. It's there that MPs, bishops, celebrities committed offences against underage children. And if everything comes out, it could bring down the government if it was all investigated properly. I suspect at least some of it's going to be covered up. But at least it will chip away at people's trust in their leaders, I hope. I wonder if the powers that be are evil enough to try and escalate war in Iraq and other countries and create situations that will lead to people calling for investigations into child abuse to stop, because it will be considered a witch hunt, and they need their leaders to focus on tackling the war. I wonder if that could be a strategy. I think that's the kind of thing they would do. Sometimes listening to what's happening in the world, and it seems to be getting worse and accelerating, it can lead you to despair. But as our guest today, Gareth Icke, said in our interview, the answer is quite simple. People just need to realise that things will not get better until the citizens of the world come together, say enough, and start respecting each other, looking for peace, loving one another. And I'd add to that, take down the system, get rid of the politicians, rebuild it with a new system and something that works. Maybe that part's not quite so simple, but the first part is simple. We need to start just caring about each other, getting together, and I think we need to take this seriously, what's happening. Things are escalating to a serious level, but the masses, the people, have the power. And if we can all just start getting together, start talking to people, to talk to friends, relatives, start spreading the message of peace, truth, justice, love, get people prepared to march if necessary when the time's right, and to stop any wars that they're planning, which I believe they are planning some wars, possibly even World War III. People still have the power if we get together. We're talking about a very small number of people in the world, our world leaders, who could potentially end up destroying it. I mean, how ridiculous would that be that we just sit by and let them do it? Let's start putting up posters, organising events, speaking to people, writing music, joining groups, wearing t-shirts. That wasn't a deliberate plug for Truth Sentinel t-shirts, although they will be arriving soon. So if you'd like one, let me know. I'll talk about that later anyway. Also, plan B, have a plan of action when things do go wrong, and if we haven't done enough, plan meeting places for when communication systems go down. Get used to living off the land. Think of a safe place that you could go and live. I'm talking about sometime in the future, so I think we've got some time to prepare anyway. Last episode we talked to David Shaler, ex-MI5 whistleblower, and he had a lot of things to say, interesting things to say. Towards the end he started talking about how he believes he's the Messiah, and I know some people may have found that hard to believe. I believe Gareth's father at one point was also ridiculed for saying he was the son of God. I think maybe his words were taken out of context anyway, but we'll be talking about that later as well. We're going to talk to Gareth Icke about music, politics, the economy, war, news, the rising cost of living, fame, peace. Gareth Icke is a singer-songwriter who writes songs with meaningful lyrics and messages. He's a keen sportsman. He plays beach soccer, swims, raises money for good causes. He's also the son of David Icke, as I just mentioned. He's involved with some of David's work, such as helping out at the People's Voice, which I believe may have come to an end. I'm not sure. Well, we'll be talking about that in the interview as well. David Icke, Gareth's father, is of course very well known. He's been on Alex Jones. I think Gareth was on one episode as well. David set up People's Voice, has written many books, including The Perception Deception and Remember Who You Are, and Gareth actually wrote a song about that, and Gareth performed at Wembley Arena, where his dad talked for many hours on his life's research about the nature of reality and his interpretation of how everything fits in. It's all connected together, and how we're being manipulated by the powerful few. And I'd be surprised if many people listening disagree with that. I believe that's going to be happening again on October the 25th in Wembley Arena this year in London. I would really like to go to that, and if I'm not abroad, I'm going to try and get a ticket for that. Most people in the UK will know David Icke was ridiculed on Terry Wogan TV chat show. That's how he came into a lot of people's consciousness. He was on the TV before that as a sports presenter, and he was a goalkeeper, I believe, as well before that. I'm just going to go and play a clip from that Terry Wogan TV interview, just so our American listeners know what we're talking about when Gareth and I are talking about that later. At the end of today's episode, I'm also going to play 2 songs by Gareth Icke. Anyway, let's get on. Here's the clip of David Icke on Wogan.
It is imbalance, but it has been increasingly in control. As I repeat, survey the world, ladies and gentlemen. Is the force of love in control of this world, guiding this planet at this time? Of course not. The negativity, the thoughts that I'm talking about that are very destructive, are pouring out of this planet
let me
every
interrupt
day.
you. Was it a great shock for you to discover this at 38?
Well, I think the word is gobsmacked. But again, you know, the best way of removing negativity is to laugh and be joyous. So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
It's fine.
I didn't mean that to be hurtful.
Sir.
I don't want you to misinterpret it. Tidal waves, eruptions, earthquakes.
Well, because of the nature of the way the Earth has been treated over a long period of time, a tremendous amount of energy has built up within the Earth that cannot get out. If it doesn't get out, bang. So this is going to be released in a controlled manner, as controlled as possible, through earthquakes, through volcanoes and such like. If they don't happen, this is not punishment. If they don't happen, there is no...
So David returned many years later and put Terry Wogan in his place, and the audience response was much more favourable, and perhaps showed that there had been a slight shift in attitudes. And now, of course, David Icke commands the attention of many thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And some of those natural disasters he talked about did in fact occur. I was caught up myself in the Asian tsunami when I arrived in Phuket, Thailand, just 4 or 5 hours before the water came in, and the bar I celebrated my arrival in was gone just hours later. It taught me a lot about fate. That was on December the 26th, 2004. Anyway, Gareth, David's son, is now making a name for himself in music. Here's the interview with Gareth Icke. So, hello, Gareth Icke. How are you?
Hello, very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good. Welcome to Truth Sentinel.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Okay, so I typed your name into YouTube just to do a bit of research, and I came up with a video of you trying to put 350 raisins in your mouth. Well, you did quite well, but you didn't quite get there. Are there any current attempts to achieve?
Yeah, I used to do a radio show called the G and Tipper Show a few years ago, and we used to try and break world records, ridiculous world records. And I'll tell you, I was about to say I never achieved it. Once I equalled one, which was how many eggs I could hold in one hand.
How many did you get to?
17.
That's pretty impressive.
It's not bad, is it? The technique is to put an egg between each finger, and then build from that.
Surely once you've achieved that in life, there's nowhere else to go, though.
Well, that's it, yeah. And I must admit, I've sort of struggled with drinking drugs ever since, just trying to get a high.
That's terrible.
Quite like carrying 17 eggs in one hand.
How'd you beat that? You probably didn't notice my little joke I slipped in there as well, saying, are there any current attempts to achieve that?
Oh! No,
currents, raisins.
Too good for me, mate.
Yes.
Too good, it's over my head.
I need to practice my jokes a bit better.
No, you just need to make them slightly more child-friendly for me.
Anyway, so thanks for coming on. I wanted to talk first of all about music.
Okay.
as you're in the music world at the moment, yeah?
Sort of, ish. Yeah.
First question, do you think music can change the world in any way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think it can get a message out there and engage more people than standing on a box in a corner of a shopping centre spouting stuff at people would ever do. So I think definitely it can make a difference. And I think emotionally as well it affects people, when they probably don't realise why it does, but it does.
Do you think there's less emphasis on political music or music that has a message these days? Because you get a lot of sort of pop music, say, from sort of Justin Bieber and X Factor and stuff like that doesn't have so much of a message, or there doesn't seem to be as much political music as there did sort of in the 60s or 70s.
I think there probably is. I just think that the major labels won't touch it.
Yeah, you might be right, yeah.
When I've sort of turned my back on that side of it. I had a contract. I've had two in my life, and now I'm completely away from it, and I do everything on my own. But when I'm touring, I'd say probably at least half of the bands that I share bills with are politically motivated in their songs.
But they're the ones that don't become so successful then?
Well, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? I mean, I play with bands that literally blow me away sometimes. And I just think to myself, how on earth aren't you ballistic? How are you not on every single radio station across the world? But, I generally just don't think the labels will touch it. I don't think that they would even be allowed to, even if they wanted to. It's just kind of fast food, fast music nowadays. Everything's cheap and quick and easily forgotten.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I was looking on Twitter the other day, and Justin Bieber's got one of the highest amount of followers. I think it is the highest actually in the world. I guess there's different markets, isn't there? There's the young sort of teenage girl market where you can become highly successful by appealing to that sort of demographic. But if you're going for the sort of alternative groups and you want a political message, maybe they think that's not going to sell as much. But I think it would.
I think it would. Yeah, I think probably the biggest market probably is the teenage girl market, probably because you've got parents that will pay for records, whereas someone in their early 20s who hasn't got a pot to wee in probably wouldn't spend money on records and stuff. So that's sad that he's got the highest amount of followers, because he doesn't say anything of any interest. So that's sort of alarming, really.
I don't know if you've been using. I guess you have been using Twitter a fair amount, but it does seem sad that you can tweet something that's got a lot of meaning and stuff, and you won't get many retweets or anything like that, or not many people will look at it. But when they tweeted that photo from the Oscar ceremony, I think it was, with just a few famous faces in it, and it nearly brought down Twitter, didn't it?
Well, that's it. But there is an obsession with celebrity now, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
And there has been for a few years. I've never understood, because I haven't sort of bought into it. It hasn't affected me, so I don't really get it. But it is an obsession. But basically you can bring down Twitter because so many people want to share a picture of some other human being stood together.
And I think you might be right. I think if any of those celebrities are extremely influential, if any of them were to start giving a political message of any kind, I reckon that someone would make sure that their popularity would go down.
Well, definitely. I think Rihanna tweeted "Free Palestine" about 3 weeks ago, and immediately took it down within about 2 minutes. And I think that's probably how quick it took for her to get a phone call from her record label or whatever saying, get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think these people would be allowed, because they genuinely do sell their souls, and for 15 minutes of fame, and then they're owned. Especially people that come through the reality sort of TV stuff, like the X Factor and like The Voice and all that sort of stuff. They're completely owned, every single bit of them is owned. I mean, I've been approached once by the X Factor and twice by The Voice, and I've said no every time. But they own everything. They own all your music, and you to a point where you couldn't go to the toilet without asking for permission from these people.
Have you ever been tempted though, like to go on X Factor or to sell your soul to the devil?
No, never. No. To be honest, I played the Afterlife Festival last year, and I was approached by The Voice. And to be honest, I don't watch TV, so I didn't know what The Voice was. I'd heard of it because you hear people talking in the pub, but I didn't know what it was all about. And they approached me and asked me if I'd go on it. To which I sort of then asked my sister, and she's got a young daughter who I thought was an age that would know what it was. So I asked her, and she was like, "Oh, it's brilliant, I love it." So I thought, well, okay, well, I'll go back to them and see what they're saying. And they said that basically I could play my own songs, and that they were basically the antidote to the X Factor, basically, was how they were sold it. So I could play my own songs, and basically, even if I didn't get through to, the final or win it, because, you'd have a floppy-haired 17-year-old who would, melt the country's hearts, which I'm not going to do with my grey temples and weathered face. But they said that even if I didn't win it, that I would have then a contract with them to songwrite for other artists.
Oh, okay.
And it sounded great to me. So I thought, okay. So I went back to them and said I was interested, but, I kind of wanted to know a bit more about it. But basically put me in the I'm interested box because, I was kind of intrigued by it. And then it turned out that it was all absolute nonsense. And the closer it got to the date that I was supposed to go in and do some filming, I was told that I couldn't play my own songs, and that was never part of the deal. There was no guarantee of any songwriting contract, and that I'd have to compete against other acts, including a bit where you sing in a boxing ring, and you sing at the other artists trying to outdo each other as if it's like a vocal boxing match.
That's right, yeah.
To which I obviously put the phone down. I'm out, I'm out. So, yeah, I've never wanted to do it. That's as close as I've got, and that was based on something that wasn't true,
Yeah, that's the show where they starts off quite rude. They've all got their backs to you, and then if they like your music, they'll swing their chair around. Isn't it?
Yeah, and I quite like the idea of that. I thought because actually, I could be, 30 stone and covered in acne, and you're going to judge me on my voice, which is excellent. But then obviously it turned out that wasn't the situation anyway, because like I said, I have to sing other people's songs, and to be honest, the idea of the boxing bit was what sealed the deal for me, because I couldn't think of anything more cringy.
Yeah, it is a little bit cringy.
Than doing that, yeah. And also, it's, people's voices, I think, are a matter of taste, Some people, I would rather listen to Shane MacGowan than I would listen to Barbra Streisand, but some people will go, well, she's obviously got a great voice and he sings out of tune.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of opinion anyway, so I don't really see the point. I mean, I don't understand how you can...
And if you think about some of the great bands of the past, like the Beatles and other bands in the 60s, they didn't have to go, there wasn't so much emphasis on the voice anyway,
No, they were just great songs.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's missing now. I mean, I go to the gym, and nowadays I just put my headphones on as soon as I arrive and go into another world. But on various occasions when I've forgotten my headphones or whatever, and you listen to the music in the gym, it's all the chart music, and you can't hear a song in half of it. Some noise will start, and then about 3 minutes later, some noise will finish, and I think I haven't heard a chorus, I haven't heard anything. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, there's another conspiracy, because they always seem to play the Kardashians on the TVs in the gym as well, I've noticed.
Yeah. I don't. And there's another one I don't get. They've sort of passed me by as well.
Yeah, you don't watch TV much, no, do you?
Well, no. It's one of those things where I don't understand why they're famous, and it's almost like Jordan is another one really, where you say, yeah, but why are they famous? And they go, well, yeah, they're famous. Yeah, I don't understand that, but why are they famous? Yeah. Well, they're just famous, aren't they? And no one can give you an answer because no one knows.
It is pretty perplexing. The Kardashians, yeah. I seem to remember my friend said to me that her father was the lawyer at the O.J. Simpson murder.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the solicitor that got O.J. off.
Yeah, and so that makes you, that actually gets your own show, you know. Gets
you get your own show because your dad managed to get a guilty murderer off. Okay, you know, if that gets you a TV show, then fair enough.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think a John Lennon, Yoko Ono style love-in protest could work these days? Sorry, it's a bit of a random question, but
it is, isn't it? Did it work then?
It got a lot of publicity, didn't it?
If me or you did it, no. I would imagine if David Beckham and Victoria Beckham did it, then it would probably make the front page of the Red Tops for a bit, but I can't see that it would make a particularly big difference.
I know what would happen if someone like David Beckham did do anything like that and said, you know, peace. It's funny that everyone would laugh at them, wouldn't they? The media would turn around and just laugh at them.
Oh yeah, totally.
And yet it's not a laughable. It's not a laughable thing. It's like
no, it's not. And the thing is as well, it's the way that we've almost been conditioned now that love is like some kind of weird sort of hippie-like word. And if someone says peace and love, then you imagine someone in a sort of tie-dye T-shirt with a couple of crystals in their hand, long hair, unwashed, sat in a field in Somerset. As opposed to just, well, if we all lived like that, then it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas an aggressive, sort of tattooed gangster rapper, effing and jeffing, is considered sort of cool and something to imitate.
Yeah, and people wouldn't laugh at them so much.
No. It is almost like we're just sort of, the world is in negative. It's just totally inverted, and if we flipped it on its head, we might be somewhere close to where we should be, really.
Absolutely, and things like music and the arts are also given second place in sort of schools and universities as well. I mean,
don't get me started, honestly, because I've got a niece and nephew that are both in primary school, and they're both, they're both pretty bright anyway academically, but they're both excellent at sport. And when I was a kid, I was good with words, but crap with numbers. So, you know, never let me hold the key on a night out, because chances are I'll completely get confused. But sport was what I was good at as a kid. And so you used to have sports day, and I would sit in sort of second set or something in all the academic stuff. But when it comes to sports day, that was my day in the sun sort of thing. And nowadays, you're not allowed winners or losers. So when they have a race, even if you're a big fat kid that comes last, you get the same as say my niece who would win the race. And when I spoke to a teacher at a sports day a couple of years ago, and I was like, what on earth is this? What do you mean you're not allowed to give them first place? Everyone gets the same medal. And she agreed completely, said it was ridiculous. She was saying, you know, because the national curriculum says that it's not fair, that it's because it's you know, persecuting essentially the fat kid.
Yeah, no, I've heard about all this sort of getting rid of competitiveness.
But then they'll still have a maths test.
Well, even in the maths test, you know, I mean, I've heard about Common Core, where you don't even have to get the question right these days. You know, they can sort of justify it that you tried your best. You know, it's like, like you say, not trying to make people not feel as though they've got something wrong, sort of protecting people a bit too much.
The thing is, it kind of works the opposite, in that as much as, you know, you might stop someone feeling bad for coming last, you actually take away the desire to win and achieve. Because people think, well, what's the point in winning?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with competitiveness at all.
No, I don't at all. I think it's kind of, you're sort of almost celebrating mediocrity rather than saying, you know, they're really good at something. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's good to have a talent. It's good to try hard. It's good to make an effort.
Yeah, exactly. And not everyone's got the same talent. So, you know, like I say, when I was a kid, sports day was my day in the sun, when the maths test certainly wasn't. But you know, the kids that might come last in the race, when maths test came along, it was their day in the sun.
Yeah.
And everyone wins. And the fact that you're not allowed that now, I find extraordinary, really.
Yeah. Another thing I was going to say, a lot of people dabble in music at university as well. You know, they form bands, and it's one of the only times in a lot of people's lives when they've got a chance to express themselves musically, because you know, let's face it, it's on some courses you do have a lot of free time if you do like a BA in history like I did. But once you leave university and you've got mortgages and kids and arrive, for a lot of people, there's no more time to sort of do that. Do you think there should be more emphasis and encouragement to sort of help adults as well get more involved in music and the arts?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. There's a weird kind of unwritten rule that if you're over 25 and a frontman, it's game over as a male, and even younger if you're a woman, as a front woman, which kind of deters people. People get to a certain age and go, I'm past it, bugger it, which I've never understood really. And I think, and the other thing as well that deters people is other people that have done sod all with their lives telling you that it's time to grow up. That's another one that infuriates me. And when I used to live on the Isle of Wight, it was worse here because it's a small neighbourhood. And you'd come back from tour and you'd get it, people that you went to school with, because it's that time you packed in that bloody music in it and got a real job.
Like working in a bank or something.
Yeah, and you think, well, you sit in an office 9 to 5 every day, or 5 days a week, and, you know, I've just played on the Isle of Jura and sat till 4 in the morning with my friends drinking whiskey and getting paid for it. Who's the idiot?
Yeah, I think some of it's jealousy. I get some of that because I travel a lot, and I spend all my money on travelling, really, and people look at me and think I'm a bit irresponsible, you know, and I'm getting on a bit now as myself, and they're sitting in they're sitting in the same job they've had for the last sort of 20 years. But I've had such an interesting, you know, a varied life. I'm not jealous of them, but I do get the feeling that sometimes they say things like that because they're just a bit jealous and a bit bored in their own lives.
Yeah, and maybe, to be honest, they're telling themselves as opposed to telling you, actually. And they're just kind of projecting that, you know, it's a lot easier to pull someone down to your level than it is to aspire to someone else's level. And I think you're right. I think there is jealousy in there, and people just think, you know, actually, if you actually went really deep inside them, then they probably wish that they'd chosen to do something a bit different as well. I certainly don't regret. Well, I choose not to regret anything because I don't see the point. I think, you know, everything happens for a reason anyway. But that kind of whole getting a secure job, you know, what does that even mean? Because I don't think there's such a thing anyway. I mean, I could dedicate 15 years of my life straight from school working in the same job for the council and get made redundant next month. Well, what's the point?
I remember reading a story of a guy who worked in a company for about 35 years, and then he had some altercation in the car park with someone and punched them. Now, that's not a good thing to do, but the company sacked him. But I just think, you know, after 35 years, you make one mistake and you get rid of a guy. You know, you could have just sat him down. And there isn't too much loyalty.
There's none. There's none. And the thing is, I would imagine after 35 years and a yearly pay rise or whatever, and benefits, and he would have been on a decent whack, and they probably got rid of him and brought in a 20-year-old fresh from uni on half the wages. You know, I mean, that stuff goes on all the time, and you know, there's no loyalty in it because it's money, and that just seems to completely rule everything.
Yeah, I was going to ask you something about that. So you mentioned you're going to a festival tomorrow, is it?
Thursday night, I'm playing a festival. Yeah.
I was going to say about money and businesses. Do you think there's a lot of music festivals have become too corporate these days, too organised, with a lot of businesses involved?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah. I mean, especially down here on the island. The Isle of Wight Festival is the big one here in June every year. And when that launched, it was launched as a kind of for the island sort of thing, and you would have Isle of Wight companies could be there and blah blah blah, and years later it's not that at all. It's all big major multinational corporations coming in and doing stuff and then taking all the money off the island, and you know, and then the sponsorship, they were right off against tax, and it is massively corporate nowadays. I mean, I played Wicker Man Festival in Scotland last month, and that was the opposite. That one's still kind of quite alternative and bohemian and well, good basically. But yeah, you're right. Most of them have become very corporate, and you know, full of wine bar tents with swanky corporate people there on a jolly drinking free champagne, which I'm pretty sure has nothing to do with the arts really.
So what are you going to be doing at your festival tomorrow then?
I'm just going to be playing an acoustic set. just nice and chilled out, just me with an acoustic and a stomp box making some noise for half an hour.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, and then I'm off on holiday the next day with the missus for a week in the sun, which I've been looking forward to since my last week in the sun, which was this time last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, an all-inclusive, typical England guy sat in a football shirt in the sun drinking lager for a week.
Listening to Spanish music instead. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And there's flamenco guitarist.
I'll tell you what, I play the guitar as well. Probably not as good as you, but I try and dabble in them. I would love to learn flamenco guitar because that music is really amazing.
It is, yeah. I must admit, I went to, because I go to Scotland every year and tour the islands for a couple of weeks. And I was out on Tyree, and we played the Tyree Music Festival. And the musicianship there, with a lot of the sort of original, sort of authentic Celtic music, is unbelievable.
Is that like folk music?
Yeah, but to a whole different level. I mean, I was one night we went back to the backstage area and tucking into a few beers and stuff, and people just picking up violin, fiddle, and someone else picked a guitar up, and they just started jamming. And I was just like, and then some guy sort of leant over to me and goes, "Yeah, to hand me a guitar." I was like, "You're having a laugh. I'm not competing with you." Like, just, unbelievable. And I think that's kind of like, I feel like about that, like that you're saying about the flamenco stuff, that you just look at it and you just go, "Do you know what? I would love to have 5% of that ability to be able to do that."
Yeah, to improvise and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, on the islands, I mean, there's to be honest, there's not a lot to do. I mean, some of the islands we play on have got a population of about 80 or 90 people. So, especially in the winter when it's pretty bleak, people just sit and learn instruments, and so their musicianship is unbelievable, through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the way life should be. If we all had a bit more free time and we all lived in smaller communities and had a lot more free time, we'd all be becoming fantastic musicians.
Well, I think, people should have more free time, but they don't. I mean, people just work constantly. You get up first thing in the morning, stuff some toast down your face, and then go to work all day, and then come home in the evening tired, stuff some food down your face, watch some telly and go to bed. And repeat,
And with the economy the way it is these days, and the cost of living, people have to work even longer hours as well. Yeah.
I mean, I find it all the time. I mean, I'm 32, but I'll go into shops and I look at the price of stuff and I think, geez, I swear my wages haven't gone up as much as everything else has gone up that you're buying.
Yeah, and occasionally you read in the newspaper, the economy, the depression is over. This is coming from the government, but for everyone I know, it's not over at all. People are struggling.
Everyone's struggling. Everyone's struggling.
Apart from maybe the people at the top who can put everything on expenses.
Oh yeah, well the 1% are laughing, aren't they? This was the thing I found with the banking crisis and the crash, where all this money, was lost, and then they had to get bailed out, and it came out of the taxes and blah blah blah, and so we all paid for it. And I didn't think that enough people were saying, well, hang on, but the money wasn't put in a skip and burn, so it's gone somewhere. So who's got it then?
Yeah.
Because someone's got it.
I think people don't question don't question enough about most things these days in the media or with the economy or that our government does. I was talking the other day about Julian Assange being holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy, and I saw a photo and there's about 30 police surrounding the place, and it's cost over 6 million just to keep him in there. I mean, you think of 6 million, what you could do with that instead of just trying to keep someone like that in there because they're worried about what he's going to say.
Yeah. But the thing is, I find that there's so much with television and with social media and with everything, that people are so bombarded with information, most of it crap, that in the end I think your brain can, and I'm sure it's intentional, because your brain can only compute so much, and it's almost like being stood in a pub, and you can imagine being stood in a pub with 5 people, and if they're all shouting information at you, in the end you're literally just going to go, I can't deal with it.
Yeah. I think you're right, yeah, I mean...
And that's why people switch off.
Yeah, the thing that annoys me is that things like the BBC website, where they'll have one article one day saying, "Oh, carrots are good for you. Apparently, they help you live longer," and then the next day they'll have an article, "Carrots cause cancer. You know, you're probably going to die if you eat them." You know, and you're just left there holding your head. You know, all these constant articles saying the opposite thing.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, I think if you looked at anything and you Googled it, you would be able to find, if you searched hard enough, an article telling you that it's the best thing in the world, an article telling you that you shouldn't touch it with a barge pole.
Yeah, I've done that occasionally. It's a good drinking game, sort of guessing whether it's true or not. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. It is almost just like such a torrent of information, and like I said, most of it rubbish. The human brain almost just switches off and goes into a mode of I can't deal with this. Mm. Which is exactly how they want you, really, because if everyone's in a mode of I can't deal with it, then no one's dealing with anything.
Exactly. I was going to ask you, what made you decide to choose a bit of a musical career and not sport, or follow in your father's footsteps and be a speaker for alternative media?
Well, I did football, and that was what my dream was. I wanted to play for Derby County in England, and that was all that mattered. And then lots of injuries and surgeries and stuff that I'd had as a kid kind of put a bit of an end to that. And then I went in and I played beach soccer, and I played that for England for 5 years, and then someone decided to break my leg in half.
It's not very nice, is it?
No, it wasn't very nice. No, so I'm all full of metal now, so I can't do sport. I can't run or anything like that. So.
And you get delayed at the airports, do you, going through the...
It does bleep, yeah. Mm. But so I'm kind of stuck with music, really.
And how's it going? I mean, what are you aiming to achieve with your music?
I just want to play. I've got to that age now where, you know, like I said earlier, I've been signed to labels before, and what I found the 2 times I was with labels, once when I was with a band and once when I was solo, is that they're not that keen so much on you gigging. It's almost like not very many gigs, but big gigs. Mm. And I'd do 3 a day if I could. So now I'm on my own. That's all I want to do. And so, you know, I was saying earlier, like I do Scotland, and I go and do all the islands and the Highlands and stuff, and then I'll just tour around everywhere. And I'm off to the Czech Republic next month for some gigs and stuff. I just love gigging, and so it's all I want to do, really. In terms of making money, I'm well aware that there's no money in it, because 98.5% of music is stolen anyway, so you're not going to make any money from record sales. Gig money, it depends where you are. Some places pay well, most don't. Not enough to live on, not by playing originals anyway. So I'm will be, as of January, a level 5 qualified personal trainer, which is what will pay the rent while and I can choose my own hours while I gallivant around playing songs basically for fun, and that's that. And I couldn't think of anything I'd rather be doing, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you normally write about with your music, or what are you know, have you changed the lyrics to your music recently, or are you trying to have a political message, or? I've grown into one, I think. Not consciously, you know. I've not sat down and gone, you know what, I'm going to write a song about Palestine. I've sort of just kind of, with age, experience, and seeing stuff generally in life, that I think I probably write a lot more mature stuff now than I did when I was younger. So yeah, I think I am a bit more political now. But like I say, it's not a conscious decision. It's just a kind of evolution, really. What track are you most proud of that you've done, either in the past or in the present?
To be honest, I always love the last song I've written, which has tended to be actually a bit of a fault of mine, really, because I always just want to play all the new songs, and I kind of forget about old songs that people might want to hear and are actually like decent enough songs. So I'm working on lots of songs at the minute that I really like, but it's probably just because they're new, and so they're relevant to me now, sort of thing, in terms of subject matter. But in terms of proud, I don't know, really. I'm not that proud of my own stuff, to be honest. And I'm not, you know, that's not me sort of fishing, but generally I just kind of, I just enjoy doing it, but I don't really think about it too much. So, like, for instance, if once I've recorded an album and I've got the mastered copy sent back to me, I'll listen to it and I'll say, yeah, no, I like the mastering work, that's good, and then it goes in the cupboard, and I never listen to it again.
You've written a book as well, I believe, How Not to Be a Rock Star. What's the idea behind that? I mean, why wouldn't you want to be a rock star?
It was basically, I was stood in a venue in Glasgow. I'd just done a gig. This was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was chatting as you do over a few pints of beer, and I started telling some stories, and so did other people, about life on the road and whatever. And I told one particular story, and this guy said, "You're talking rubbish." And I was like, "What?" And he accused me of being a liar, because he was like, "There's no way that story's true." To which I called a friend over and was like, "Can you verify this for me, please?" Which he did. And so this guy went, "You know what, you should write a book, because that's just insane." And so when I got back to the Isle of Wight, where I was living at the time, I spoke to my old bandmates, and I said, you know, I'm thinking about writing it down, because I think, so I don't forget it, basically. And so they sort of thought that was a good idea. So it's just basically a book about touring as an unsuccessful punk rock band that failed miserably, but got into some ridiculous situations and some ridiculous scrapes. One of which killing a man in Wales, which not every band can say they did. Really.
Are you able to elaborate on?
Yeah, basically, I played a gig in South Wales, in Aberdare, in the Valleys, or just south of the Valley, and I was on stage, and as I came off in the interval, this guy collared me in the toilet, and he asked me if I could mention the name of this kid in the village that was going to, or needed to go to America for a cancer treatment that he couldn't get in the UK, and they were raising money for this kid, and could I mention it, and he'd go around with a bucket, to which I obviously said, yeah, of course, not a problem. About 5 minutes later, another guy came up to me and went, you know that fellow, he's talking nonsense. I was like, what do you mean? He said, he's a liar, he's making it up. I was like, what? You know, what a strange, bizarre thing to make up. So as I walked back towards the stage, I went up to the original guy and I said, oh, what's that kid's name? I don't want to get his name wrong. And he just looked at me like I was a complete idiot. And he couldn't remember the lie he told me. So he gave me the ump, to be honest. So then, at the end of the set, we were doing a dance competition to win a T-shirt and stuff, and there were all these sort of drunk Welsh people. And obviously, if you've got a microphone, you're basically God, essentially. So I was shouting at the venue to get this guy up to dance. And he was going, no, I don't want to dance, I don't want to dance. And I was going, get him up. To which they forced him up. And then a couple of minutes into the song, he clutched his chest and keeled over and hit the deck.
Oh, blimey.
And was brown bread before he hit the floor.
That'll teach him.
To which I turned to the guitarist and went, pack up the gear, pack up the gear, pack up the gear.
Time
We're
to
out
go.
here. Yeah. So that's just one of the bizarre stories that happened. So yeah, so I just wrote it all down. And yeah.
How can people get hold of that book if they want to?
They can just go to my website, which is just GarethIcke.com, and it's only £6, I think. So it's as cheap as chips. And I've had lots of good feedback on it. People have read it more kind of out of a, let's see what this Wally's written, I bet it's rubbish, and have then come back to me and said, actually, I wanted to think it was crap, but I really enjoyed it.
So that's How Not to Be a Rock Star.
How Not to Be a Rock Star, yeah. Because I figured, there's so many books out there if you go into any sort of music section in Waterstones or whatever, and it's all about success, isn't it? Yeah, the story's always written by the victor, isn't it? And it's kind of, and I vomited in my Bentley. And I just thought it would be nice to just have a story of a real rock and roll band that failed, like 99.9% of rock bands. Would you turn down success, though, if it came knocking on the door? I think it depends what terms there were. And depends what you term as success, I suppose, as well. Well, exactly. Money has never interested me. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I had it, and I've never had any, so it's not something I'm going to miss. I'm not bothered. Yeah. If you have that sort of attitude, because I have that as well, then you're probably not going to do the things that you need to do to become rich anyway. No, but it's never interested me. I've never seen the point of it, and most of the people that I know that have got a few quid are the most miserable people I know. And because they've got money, they're worried about losing it. And so they almost live their lives in this state of insecurity that I have never felt, because you can't lose what you haven't had.
And people don't particularly like you if you're rich either. I mean, if you think of the richest people in the world, people don't generally say nice things about them.
No, maybe partly through jealousy, which I've never understood, because I've never been jealous of what someone else has got. But secondly, probably because to get a lot of money, unfortunately, you normally have to be a bit of an arsehole.
Yeah, that's true.
And step on people, or at least sell out morals or whatever. So that's probably another reason people don't like rich people, because, you know, they're probably not particularly nice people. Obviously not all of them. I'm sure there's some lovely rich people, but a lot of them aren't, you know.
Yeah, you have to do compromise your ethics as well. Maybe I was going to ask you what when it comes to sort of females in the music industry these days, it seems as though taking your clothes off is a fast track to success for women, because sex sells. I mean, what do you think about that? And is there any pressures for men as well? Like, I mean,
I'm not sure, but potentially. To be honest, I don't think the casting couch ever went away. You know, I think that kind of sort of, it's almost like folklore, isn't it, about, you know, in the 60s and 70s, how, you know, there was a casting couch if you wanted to be famous. I don't think that's ever gone away. You know, I think almost certainly ugly chief execs of record labels and you know, film companies with big cigars in their gobs have probably slept with numerous women out of their league, purely who are out of desperation for fame. You know, I'm sure that goes on. And to be honest, it probably goes on with men as well. It wouldn't surprise me at all. It's not something I've ever been faced with. I've never, been on a casting couch. And
you don't want to go there either.
No, I wouldn't. But, I mean, I got offered $100,000 as a marketing deal for my first album, if I would change my name, which I refused to do, obviously.
What's wrong with your name?
Well, just because of my dad, basically, to remove any of that, and which I obviously, you know, told him to shove it up the backside.
Yeah, fair enough.
So he's never interested me. I've never wanted it badly enough, if I'm honest. Certainly not badly enough to sell my soul.
Sounds to me like you've got too many ethics.
To be a big, fat, rich rock star driving a Rolls Royce, almost certainly, yeah. But I'm quite happy with my flat and my McGann.
Yeah, fair enough. Nothing wrong with McGann's, no.
To be fair, 120,000 miles, it's taken me to gigs and it's never let me down, touch wood, so yeah.
Good. I was going to say, we hear a lot about Satanism and the Illuminati symbolism in the music industry with stars like Katy Perry and Lady Gaga. What do you think about that? Do you think there's something to it, you know, with all the rituals that people have said they do on the stage?
To be honest, I don't know enough about it. An uneducated opinion would be that it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
In the slightest, if that sort of stuff went on. In fact, like I say, uneducated, I would say, yeah, it probably does. There's so much darkness around, and it seems to be wherever there's, you know, vast amounts of money and stuff that you tend to attract these dark people. So yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah.
But like I say, I don't know enough about it, and not that I've ever been anywhere near that level musically, but I've never seen it. You know, certainly not at the grassroots level.
Yeah. Your father's a very spiritual person. Would you say you are as well, and do you incorporate into your music at all?
I think I am a bit more the older I'm getting. I tend to you know, especially when I'm going up to sort of Scotland and places, and I find myself going to stone circles and being sort of in awe of stuff that I probably wouldn't have paid any attention to before. So yeah, I think I probably am a bit more than I was, but I think that probably just comes with age for a lot of people. I think, you know, my dad, when he was 30, probably wasn't particularly spiritual. You know, I think you just sort of grow as you get older, and it kind of just happens naturally, I think.
I was going to say a lot of sons and daughters rebel from what their parents tell them or what they hear their parents say and do. But it seems like you embrace a lot of what your father talks about. Is that the case? I mean, do you agree with a lot of what your dad says, or everything, or some of it?
Yeah, I think it kind of, if it just rings true to you, then and it feels right, then that's it. So yeah, and also I think when I went into music and stuff, and I was younger and you know, wide-eyed and whatever, and I saw the level of the corruption and you know, being offered money, like I said, to change my name and all that kind of stuff, and I saw it and I just thought, you know, what he was saying just made complete sense, because I'd seen it firsthand. You know, just how it is run by the few, that exploit the memory and all this kind of stuff, you know, and so it just sort of felt right to me, really. So yeah, so I probably did rebel when I was younger and, you know, act like a prat and get drunk at 16.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I know I did. I was very good at it. Which is something I haven't quite grown out of yet.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? That a lot of our listeners are from the USA, and they might not. I'm sure they probably do know your father and who you are, but they might not know some of the background. Like your father was, David was ridiculed a bit on the Terry Wogan interview, and I was going to ask you, if you don't mind, that is, did you suffer any embarrassment or ridicule as a result of that particular situation?
Yeah, it was horrible. Yeah, for to be honest, even probably till now. I mean, the last couple of years I've had lots of kind of people coming up and apologising, which is quite odd when it's sort of, you know, 20 years after the event. But yeah, it was not nice. I mean, there was I used to get followed to school by reporters, and they would be outside the house, and I had, you know, friends that I knocked about with, their parents were offered money to tell them bad things about my family. You know, so it was pretty horrific, yeah, and we got a hell of a lot of grief. I think my sister, she's 7 years older than me, so being 17 at the time, I think she got it a lot worse. You know, she got the brunt of it. But yeah, I got a hell of a lot of grief. But, you know, what doesn't kill you and all that.
Yeah. And I guess now you do have, being connected to your father, you do have a community of people that obviously do support your father, so it's a bit different in that way. You've got, you know, your father David has become so much more popular with a certain type of people.
Yeah, I think as well that, you know, the more stuff that he says that comes true, it kind of, if your angle is to ridicule and take the mick, and say someone's insane, obviously every time something that they say is proved true, it kind of kills your angle a little bit. So I've, you know, after this kind of Westminster paedophile ring has sort of come out, I had 3 or 4 messages from people, Facebook messages from people I went to school with, going, "Geez, man,
yeah,
like, this is freaking me out," because he's right again. And I've got a friend, James, he's a good pal of mine, and another Derby County fan, and we go to games together and stuff. And he said to me, I had a gig in Bedford on Sunday, and he came down to it, and he said to me, he said, "Your dad's freaking me out, man, because I can't get my head around it, and I just thought it was nonsense." And then there's 3 or 4 now separate things that I laughed at that have come true, and it's worrying me that the rest of it's true as well. And if it is, I'm not sure how I can compute that mentally.
I think a lot of people can understand that, because if you get involved with investigating some of these conspiracy theories, they do sound ridiculous. Some of them really do sound ridiculous, but the more you delve into them, the more a lot of them appear to be true. And after a while, you're just left thinking, "Oh God, you know, what kind of world am I living in?"
Yeah, exactly. It's a cliche, but it's true. You know, the truth is stranger than fiction a lot of the time. It really is. You know, some of the stuff, it is freaky, and I understand that. You know, and I understand that people who have lived, you know, a sheltered life, especially on the Isle of Wight, like I said to you before when we had a wee chat, I said that, you know, in terms of the wake up or the mass awakening or whatever's happening, it's kind of bypassed the Isle of Wight a bit. It's sort of a bit of a lost cause, and I kind of understand that to a certain extent, because it's so shut off and so sheltered that, you know, if you've lived 25, 30 years, 50 years of a life completely sheltered, and all of a sudden someone's telling you something that is completely on another planet from your life, then I can understand, you know, why people just think it's mental.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can't get their head around it. I do understand it.
Yeah, I mean, and like I was saying before, especially with, say, married people who've got kids and they're working and they're so busy, the only things they catch are really the mainstream media, and they don't have time to do. You have to investigate these things yourself to actually find stuff out, because investigative journalism is dying quite a fair bit over the last. It's died a fair bit over the last 20 years, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, also the best news you're going to get now is from the internet, because all the news companies, all the corporations and newspapers and the online stuff, in terms of, like Guardian Online or whatever, they're all owned by a handful of people that are in the club anyway, so they're never going to give you the truth. So, and that's what 90% of people are being fed. That's what their truth is. Their truth is what they read in the Daily Star. So to then, give them a completely opposite point of view is, some people can't really cope with it. For me, it's different. I've grown up with it, from day naught, basically, to question everything. So,
and you talked about a mass awakening. I think it's true, but I'm not sure. Like, it's difficult to gauge whether the numbers of people are rising interest in this stuff. But you're probably in a better situation to see, because you get involved with some of your dad's stuff. You were mentioning about looking after the forums and things on your dad's website. Have you seen interest grow in these topics?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. And for me, it's kind of because I have three separate lives, in the fact that I have my musical life, where I'm surrounded by musicians and promoters and people that go to gigs and like music and drink lots of beer and eat kebabs. And then I have my football life, which is obviously not playing anymore, unfortunately, but going to Derby County every week, sitting in the pub, drinking beer, talking about football, eating kebabs. So there's a theme with beer and kebabs. But then there's the other bit, which is obviously this part of it, which is running the forums and sort of playing Wembley and doing stuff with my dad and to do with this sort of information. And what I've found is that the three separate lives aren't separate anymore. In that I'm sat in the pub before Derby County games, sat with a bunch of beer-bellied lads covered in football tattoos, talking about the Rothschilds, which wasn't happening 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So the fact that what society would probably perceive to be the uneducated, which is the beer-swilling football fan, are waking up and seeing it for what it is. And so I think, that for me is a mass awakening that I've seen, that I've seen personally. The fact that people across those separate lives aren't, like I say, they're not separate anymore. People are just kind of talking about what's going on in the world and stuff. Yeah, which is good. I mean, it's excellent.
And when you do your fitness instruction, are you going to have kebabs and beer as part of the actual training system?
No, to be honest, I'm quite good these days, actually. I don't really drink that much. And I might treat myself to a kebab sort of once a month.
Damn, but, I thought you'd come across some revolutionary new fitness system.
No, what I have found, though, is it's carbs that are the problem, and the fat content, not so much. So you can kind of eat as much fat as you want, really. Just don't load up on carbs. But another reason for personal training is once I'm qualified, then I'm going to go and do my final course, which will be injury rehabilitation. One, because I wanted to do it personally, because I've had so many injuries, including having my leg hanging off. And the other was because I want to be able to help in terms of, in a war zone and stuff. And I think I look at sort of what's going on in Gaza now, and I think, when the bombs stop falling and whatever, there's so many thousands of injuries and people that need to, learn to walk again or whatever, that it's something that I would love to be able to do, to go in and actually do some good. And that's another reason to do the personal training, but, to another level. So it's not just kind of rich housewives that want to lose the middle-aged spread. because I'm sure the money doing that would be good, but I don't think it would fulfill me emotionally.
Yeah, I mean the Palestine and Gaza thing has been dominating the news. Are there any other particular things that catch your interest in the news, or causes that, as well as this, the one you've just mentioned, that causes that capture your interest in particular?
Not that's in the news, to be honest, no. Because it don't tend to be in the news. I mean, one that's ridiculous is the fracking. I mean, that's insane. I mean, it literally is insane. If you look at it and understand what it is, and you told a 3-year-old that that's what the government was going to be doing, you know, a 3-year-old would tell you that it was insane. And the Isle of Wight, so where I grew up, it's just signed away its life to fracking, and so anywhere here can be completely open to it. So, you know, you're going to poison the water table, which I'm sure is totally planned, because, you know, then you hold a water supply and you make people dependent.
Yeah, nobody seems to be really taking seriously looking for alternative energy. You know, we all know that solar energy and windmill technology and wave technology could all work. And I reckon a ring of those windmills around the Isle of Wight would actually look quite nice.
Really, I mean, you could have, you know, well, Tesla had it sorted, didn't he, to be honest, I think. You know, harnessing energy out of the atmosphere. You know, I think that technology is there, but you know, there's no money in it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's unfortunately what it comes down to. And I think that is, I mean, with that and with you know, Israel and other things, that the only way to make a difference, I think, is boycotting, because money is the only thing that matters to these people. Is money and power, and you know, the two come as a single package. So I think, you know, boycotting is the way forward.
Indeed. I've seen some of your tweets on Twitter, and you seem like you've got some views on a lot of subjects. How come you stay out of the limelight a bit more than your father does?
Because I'm not famous. To be honest, you know, I mean, if you think in the 80s, he was a household name. As a TV presenter, and obviously as a footballer before that. So obviously when he came out and said stuff, people listened because he was famous. If I was a, you know, Manchester United footballer saying what I'm saying, then I would be on the front page of every newspaper.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's what it is. You know, no one knows who I am, but I like that. If I'm honest, I couldn't think of anything worse than being famous.
What about being a professional footballer? I mean, some of these guys earn obscene amounts of money. Do you think that, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, do you think that's justified or not?
Not at all, no. Not at all. I think, you know, if there's that much money in the game, then the footballers should be earning most of it. Understandable, but there shouldn't be that much money in the game. You know, it used to be the working man's sport, and it's not anymore, because the working man can't afford to go to a game.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't get, you know, if people going to see the match were able to buy tickets for sort of £5, then the players, they couldn't play the players the amount they do, so they could give it back to the fans, couldn't they? Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, I'm lucky being a Derby fan and a season ticket holder and stuff, because I don't feel that I get ripped off there. A season ticket is £300 for every game. You know, which isn't too bad compared to some. I mean, I'm not sure what Man United is, probably £2,500 or something. Yeah.
But so I feel quite lucky. But when I go to the away games, obviously you have to pay the price that club is charging. And you know, I went to QPR 3 or 4 years ago, and they wanted £50. And I paid £20 Derby for one ticket, £50. And I couldn't believe it. And in the end, Derby refused, and they said that they weren't letting their fans be charged that much. And so I think Derby actually subsidised half of each of our tickets themselves, so we paid £25. But that was bizarre. You know, how you get £50 to sit down for an hour and a half?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. You can't justify that. I mean, I think Arsenal are about £75, I think.
It's not just football, though, is it? I mean, I went to the cinema about 6 months ago after travelling for some time. Came back to England. I was just shocked, like how much they wanted me to pay for a ticket. I mean, it was about £20 for a ticket plus a Coke and some popcorn or something. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it.
I know. To be honest, I don't like going to the cinema because I like watching films, so I can just get up and go to the toilet and I can have a chat and I can do what I want, as opposed to being just stuck in front of a big screen for 2 hours or whatever. But my missus loves going, so occasionally we'll go, or occasionally I'll go with her. And you're right, yeah, it's insane. And it used to be like the cheap night out, didn't it? It's like, I can't, I'm trying to save some money, so should we just go to the cinema instead of sort of going out? And you think, well, actually, it's going to cost you the same as it would to go out for a meal. Now, I mean, if I take the girlfriend, like you say, bag of sweets, Coke, and boycotting Coke, but a drink, and 2 tickets to the cinema, it's costing you 30, 40 quid, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's getting crazy. You sometimes accompany your dad when he does speeches at Wembley Arena, don't you?
Yeah.
How's that gone in the past? And you've got another one coming up, I believe, as well. Do you enjoy doing those?
I did, because I did 4 songs at the last one. By the 4th song, I was enjoying it. For the first 3, I was absolutely bricking it. Reason being, obviously it's had a lot of people for one, but because it's not my gig and because it wasn't a musical event, I had it in my head that I was going to go out there and start playing a song, and 8,000 people or whatever were going to sit there going, why is this prat singing at me? I'm here to listen to David, not him.
Because you've got people with lots of different musical tastes in one audience, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly, and so I was very nervous, and then when I had played a couple of songs, and then we went backstage, and one of my friends had filmed on their mobile, and because you couldn't hear the audience from the stage, you couldn't hear them, so when we sort of finished the song, all I heard was silence, which to me underlined my previous fear that they didn't actually want me there. But it was only when someone played me on their mobile, or what they recorded, and you heard the cheering and the stuff, that I thought, actually, I've done all right here. So I'm hoping this time, in October, that I won't have the doubts, so I can kind of actually enjoy it a bit more.
And didn't you write some songs specifically for that? I Remember Who You Are, I think.
Yeah, I wrote that track for it, yeah. To be honest, I'd already written about 2/3 of the song, and Dad phoned me and said, it was going to be called Remember Who You Are, could I put a track together for it along these lines? And I said, well, actually, as it happens, I'm kind of 2/3 through one that is exactly what you've just described, so, jobs are good in. So I threw in Remember Who You Are, Lime, and that was that. So the song was already written, fortunately. But that was written for that, I suppose.
And a lot of people do appreciate music that's got a message, and to be in an audience like that a lot of them believe in a certain have a certain common interest, and to hear music that has got some message as well, they must have sort of liked that as well.
Well, I got a lot of messages, and I still do get them. People saying that the music means a lot to them, which is unbelievable for me. I'm just like, well, I'm just a guy that sort of sat in a bedroom with an acoustic, banged it out for a bit, and then, had a game of FIFA. So for someone to say that it emotionally sort of did this and did that is awesome for me, because it shows you're doing something right, which is, kind of all the validation I need, really.
It's always good.
Yeah, and we get a fair bit of stick as well, which is always fun. If you go to any of my videos and look at the comments, there's always a few having a go, but
you can deal with that.
It doesn't bother me. Yeah, I've been insulted many times, so it's sort of water off a duck's back, really.
Yeah. I got contacted the other day by a member of a well-known band, and we were just sort of brainstorming, possibly dreaming about a future truther festival, like or a festival with lots of political messages, like a bit like Woodstock from the 60s and 70s. Do you think that would be possible these days?
I think it would. Yeah, it would be a really, really good idea, actually. There's a lot of red tape. I know that when friends that have put on festivals or gigs and stuff, and the council never make it easy. They never make anything easy. But I think it'd be great, yeah.
I mean,
and it'd be
sometimes
nice to have a festival that's not, like we were talking about earlier, you know, hijacked by corporations, you know.
they'd probably try, but you could try and stop them, couldn't you?
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't do it.
If there's enough people. I mean, sometimes it's tragedy and wars that sometimes create the best music. If you think about the Vietnam period, you know, some of the music around that time was just fantastic.
Yeah. And then if you think, you know, about the grunge era, which was, you know, what really got me into music, and all those American bands coming out of Seattle and stuff, you know, and that was a real powerful time as well politically, with, you know, America in a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it captured the mood a bit. You mean on stuff like Nirvana and
I mean, that was, you know, that was during the first Gulf War, wasn't it? That stuff. So that was, you know, almost like their Vietnam. But you know, for the second Gulf War, I think we got, I'm not sure what we got, JLS or something. It's not quite the same.
No. I was going to ask you, People's Voice, that your father set up some time ago. You got involved with that as well, didn't you? And you were trying to encourage some new bands to come on. How did that go?
Well, until the whole thing went down the toilet, it was really frustrating because obviously I'm not a TV presenter, and so I was, you know, learning as I was going, and the producers were the same, and we were all trying to write the show and do it, and it was trial and error, to be honest. And so the first sort of handful of shows, there were bits of it that were very good and very funny, and there were bits of it that I thought, oh God, that hasn't worked, that gag. And so when we got told that filming was ending, and we all said our goodbyes and whatever, I think it was the 11th or 12th show, which was the last one, we'd nailed it. And so we were all so gutted because we'd finally got the show where we wanted it to be in terms of the format, and the delivery and everything. And so we peaked, and then it was cancelled.
I mean, there might be some people listening who knew about the People's Voice and don't know what the current status is, or even who don't know about People's Voice from the USA. I mean, what is the current situation with it, if you're able to say?
All I know is that it went into liquidation, and I only found that out from Facebook. And then it's been relocated to California, and it's registered there now.
Is the show? I mean, are they still broadcasting at the moment?
Not that I know of. I don't think so. No. And that's it. That's all I know. I mean, when we got taken off air, because of sort of financial reasons, which was upsetting because the band cost 20 quid to make, so it was a cheap show. It cost a crate of beer and a pizza and 3 pizzas or whatever it was, which was for the bands. Apart from that, everyone on the show was a volunteer. So, so we would have liked to have carried on doing it because, as far as we were concerned, you know, it wasn't losing a lot of money. But when it did get cancelled, I was assured that it would be back, and that, you know, it was just a bit of a break while they tried to sort out financial things. And so obviously I was still excited by it, and I was still being approached by bands to come on the show. And then, you know, like I said, I found out on Facebook it had gone into liquidation. It was like, oh, okay. I'm guessing we won't be making any more then. Which is disappointing. Yeah, because I mean, I've had a few conversations with some of the producers and stuff that I work with. A guy called Dan and a girl called Amy, and we became really good mates doing it. And as I said, we'd nailed it by the final show. So we were really gutted because we felt that you know, it was just such a waste because we finally got it there, and you know, we were putting out all these bands and these comedians and these artists and stuff that weren't getting any exposure otherwise, and we felt like that we were actually making a difference, and then it sort of just was swept from underneath us, which is disappointing. But you know, who's to say that we can't do it again on another channel or another format or whatever? Exactly.
I mean, you can't take away the experience from what you went through, and you could prove valuable in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was good fun as well, and the bands were excellent, you know, And that was really good because I love music, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't play it. So for me to also, be doing the show on a Thursday night, sort of hanging out, watching really good bands play.
It's not a bad way to spend the evening.
It's not a bad spend. No, exactly. I mean, I used to drive down from Derby to London and film, and then drive back sort of through the night. But I just love it because, like I said, you just got to watch really good bands play and then have a chat with them afterwards. It's like the perfect groupie lifestyle.
That's fantastic, yeah. Listen, I'm probably going to come to an end now, but I just wanted to say thanks very much for coming on and speaking to us today.
No, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. I'm basically chatting, which is what I do anyway. It's just you're recording it.
And put in a good word to your dad if you can. It'd be nice to have him on sometime as well.
I will, yeah. I will, definitely.
Thanks. And I'm going to play 2 of your songs. I'm going to put them in after I finish the recording of this interview. They're called Get Your Love On and Beat Up. Can you explain what they're about before we end?
Beat Up that was my last single. That's basically about what it says in the tin, being beaten up, metaphorically, and getting up again, and rising, which I think is what the human race is doing.
Yeah.
It's basically been beaten up and downtrodden for too long, and it's about time that we sort of stood up and said there's 7 billion of us, and we're not being dictated to by 1% of you anymore. And Get Your Love On is basically the same as that. In a sense, it's kind of like, for want of something more artistic, sort of just love each other and make your own rules, and instead of being completely overwhelmed by authority and whatever. But what I'm going to do for Wembley, I'm going to release Get Your Love On for that. And we're going to press 2,000 CDs just solely for Wembley. And sell them for £1, and the profits will go to Gaza, which is, and I'm not very good at maths, but I've done some loose calculations, and with the cost of making the CDs, whatever, it would work out that we'd probably be able to send about £1,500 to Gaza, which is, a lot of money.
That's brilliant, yeah.
So hopefully that can, I'm told, because my family, like so my dad, my mum, my sister, myself and my brother have for want of a better term, adopted a family in Gaza. So we send them money every month. And it's about £100 to feed a family for a month. So obviously £1,500 is going to make a bit of difference.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so that'd be good. Hopefully, if we can sell them.
It's such a simple message, isn't it? To sort of love one another and be good to people. But it's not actually happening. It's quite a simple idea, but it's not actually happening around the world, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's the 10 Commandments, isn't it? I think it was George Carlin sort of just puts them down into one, which is basically don't be a dick. and that's it. And if everyone lived by that, and it's that simple, just don't be an arsehole.
Yeah, you're right. How do you explain that to people who are being arseholes? I sometimes just wonder how to get through to them,
Exactly. What annoys me, I think, is people overcomplicate things. And you say, you know what, if you had no soldiers, you have no army, no war. Simple as that. If every soldier went, I'm not fighting, it would be over. And people go, nah, it's not as simple as that.
It is
that simple. It's completely that simple. And people try and overcomplicate stuff. Oh, no, but you'll always have tyrants, and you'll always have this, and you'll have that. And there's always an excuse for why we should stay subservient and in crap. As opposed to just going, you know what, you're right.
Actually, that is true, but let's just think about that for a second, because I sort of agree with you, but if everyone did that but one country didn't, and they started attacking everyone, what could we do then?
Well, call on America, I suppose. But that's the thing, isn't it? But then that's where you have to really specify the word everybody. If everybody did it, because the thing is, you think about the Second World War. When I've walked around war graves in northern France, and it's bizarre because all the Allied ones are white graves and all the German ones are black crosses. But you look at the ages of them, and Steve died from Eastbourne at 22, and Stev or whatever from Berlin died at 22. They're just kids. And the thing is, I think if they were sat in a pub and they weren't at war, they would probably be having a game of pool and getting on really well. And it's 2 leaders above them that have sent them to their deaths. And I think, if both of them just went, you know what, I don't have a problem with Steve from Eastbourne because he's done nothing to me.
Exactly.
And they shook hands and went down the pub. It would be as simple as that.
And that actually happened, I think, in the First World War when it was Christmas. They sort of all stood up and had a bit of a party and then went back on killing each other,
Yeah, they had a game of football, didn't they, in no man's land on Christmas Day, yeah.
It's crazy.
But that, to me, just underlines just how ridiculous it is. The fact that you can have a game of football and then sit the next morning, get up and blow the right back's legs off.
It's mad, isn't it? And I guess, if there was one country that were going to attack everyone else who decided to choose peace, then if everyone stood up and said, fine, just kill us then. I mean, how long could other soldiers just shoot people who weren't fighting back? At some point they would just stop and think, we can't do this anymore,
Yeah, I honestly think that fixing the world is far more simple than people will let themselves believe.
I agree. If everyone, or at least a large majority of people, agreed with each other that this was the way to go, then we could solve it all. But it's just getting everyone to agree, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's kind of, the first thing that would have to go for that to happen would probably be religion, to be honest. It would have to be religion, and it would have to be the perception that monetary wealth is what we should all be aspiring to. If you lost religion and you lost an obsession with money, then I would imagine you would lose war overnight, because that's all they are ever about.
I'd add another one to that, land as well, the obsession with being part of your particular area of land, like countries. So we come back to the John Lennon song, Imagine, really, don't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, he kind of nailed it, didn't he? And people see that as a beautiful song, but always a bit airy-fairy. Well, it's how it is. If we could all just get along, if you look at the human body, we're all the same, really. Just different variations, but we're all the same.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think it's okay to have a faith, but as long as it doesn't bother anyone else, and as long as you're not going to try to stipulate that other people have to agree with the rules, and you're going to kill them if they don't,
Exactly, and to be honest, I think most people, in fact, I'd go the 99.9 of them, are like that. I mean, I went down from Derby to the Palestine protest in London on Saturday, and there was me and another guy, but the only two white people on the particular coach we were on. Everyone else was Muslim, from different areas of the Middle East, and then obviously a lot that was sort of born and raised in England. And we had a great time, a really good laugh. I guess I would be classed as an atheist simply because I don't have a religion. I believe there's something, but I don't know what it is, and I'll find out when I get there. But we had a great time, and no one forced a faith on anyone. And we were all there simply because it's the right thing to do. Nothing to do with religion.
Yeah,
and I think most people are like that. These people are all Muslims, some of them probably more liberal than others, some more serious about their faith and kind of, But not once did I feel uncomfortable or be made to feel like I'd made the wrong choice by not being Muslim or any other religion. That's all.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah, I think most people are like that as well. I think it's, you get the odd fanatic, but I think most people are kind of like, well, I believe in this and you don't. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I
I think most people do. It's just highly organised religions with people at the top again. It's those people at the top that are...
and but then that comes back to the other thing is money. Religion's big business.
Sure is.
You only have to look at the Catholic Church.
Blimey, yeah, don't get me started.
It's big business, and these people at the top, I don't think, in terms of what you would imagine a Christian person to be, the people at the top are so far from being Christian, it's unreal.
You could solve a lot of the world debt and poverty problem with the amount the Catholic Church actually have in reserves, assets wise.
No, of course you could. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
exactly.
That's probably not the nicest notes to finish on, but
I'm feeling positive Genuinely. And I actually feel more positive after Saturday, because there was 150,000 of us marching in London, and I was just looking around at these people, all different shapes, sizes, colours and creeds, and I was just thinking, do you know what? The world ain't that bad if this is happening. And we were walking down Oxford Street, like I say, 150,000 people, and people were coming out of the Primark and coming out of the shops and stuff and applauding. Just regular people shopping, and they were applauding as we were walking past. And I was just like, you know what? I really a lot more faith actually in humanity after that.
Thanks, Gareth. That's a much better note to finish on. Thank you. Oh no, thank you so much for coming on, and hope to speak to you again in the future. Good luck with your festival and your trip abroad soon.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers. Catch you later.
All right, take care, mate.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Great to talk to Gareth there. I hope he's having a good time on holiday. I think I need a holiday actually. I guess everybody needs a holiday. There's something about just lying in the sun, forgetting about everything. Anyway, must stop dreaming. Remember, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. Albert Einstein. I added a donations button to the About section on the YouTube channel, as I mentioned in the last episode. Please support us if you can. People who donate over £30, even if it's not all at once, so you could do two, up to a total of £30. You get sent a Truth Sentinel t-shirt, which are currently on their way over from the Ukraine at the moment. So you get that Albert Einstein quote on the back with the satellite logo, Truth Sentinel logo on the front. If you do hit the £30 mark of donation, send me an email with your address and your name, etc., and I'll send you the t-shirt. I'll try and include postage and packing unless you live in Australia, and then I might have to add some. Even then I think it should be okay. I think it's quite cheap to send one t-shirt even to Australia, so that should be included. If you can't afford £30 but you'd like to donate something, that's good too. I will give credits to everyone who donates, so you'll be official sponsors of the show. I wanted to reassure you that this channel will never charge you for listening. Any requests for donations or products we might try and sell are just purely to survive in this temporary involuntary system we currently live under, as I said before. I wanted to thank Denise. I'm just going to mention first names of people who do provide donations. Denise, thank you so much for your support and sponsorship for today's program. Additional thanks to Kieran P, a musician, you know who you are, for your promotion efforts as well. Don't forget to come and say hi, get in contact on Facebook, Twitter, email scottsentinel9@gmail.com. That's scottsentinel9@gmail.com. On Twitter, just type in Scott Sentinel. On Facebook, the same. I'm going to give you a list of possible topics, and I want to appeal to anyone who's listening who's an authority on any subject to contact us. Topics coming up in future episodes could include honor killings, time travel, the Dyatlov Pass incident, religious cults, any news events that need addressing, parallel universes, the control of scientific fact, health and food truths. If you're someone who knows a lot about nutrition and the truth behind what we're eating, please come on and talk to us. There's many more topics, you know, that we could talk about, including the fact that history's been rewritten, laser weapons and new weapons technology, Area 51, Hitler escaped and didn't die immediately after the war, Agenda 21, Protocols of Zion, New World Order, Chemtrails, Mothman, Philadelphia Experiment, Skull and Bones, Secret Societies, the Vatican, the Georgia Guidestones, the Secret Past of Obama, Angels, Miracles, the Power of Positive Thinking, Paedophiles in the UK or internationally, of course, Superpowers, the CIA, Life After Death, Dreams, Walt Disney and Satanic Symbolism, the Illuminati, Global Warming, Holographic Universe, Philosophers, the Ark of the Covenant, Noah's Ark, Serial Killers and Voices, Aliens Amongst Us. I could go on. If you know a lot about any of those subjects, please come on and email me and let me know whether you'd like to come on as a guest. Don't forget, I'll be playing 2 songs of Gareth Icke shortly Other shows that I've listened to which I can recommend, Hagman. Probably need to be more of a religious nature if you want to listen to them. I quite like their shows. Freeman Fly, Freeman TV, great if you want to find out more about the satanic symbolism and the Masons. Mark Cocking, who came on this show once, he's got a new show. Have a look on my Facebook page, you should find links to his show there. John Gary, the taxi driver who came on this show once before, he's got his own website. You can find him by doing a search on John Gary, Jongery. Another one is Peter Wicker and Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, which I actually did a recording with Peter Wicker the other day. You can catch that on his channel soon, or you can catch it on here in a week or two. That's Truth is Stranger Than Fiction with Peter Wicker. David Icke, of course, excellent website with some good news articles on there, some great videos. There's a YouTube channel as well. I was thinking of having debate shows from time to time where we'll talk about a particular question and we'll present the facts about each particular side of the argument, test theories, and then maybe get people to vote at the end. If it's popular, we could have a regular one every few months. We could have a vote button at the end of each episode. Let me know what you think about that. Sponsors, advertisers, financiers, please contact us to start negotiations. We might need to add a slot to promote something related to truth. It could be a book, a show, an ethical product, etc. Please let us know. scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Okay, well, thanks for listening. I'm going to leave you now with two of Gareth Icke's songs. One that I believe has only just been released. As we mentioned in our interview, the names of the songs are Beat Up and Get Your Love On. Hope you enjoy listening to them. Thanks for listening to Truth Sentinel. Catch you later. Goodbye.
Beat up, beat up, beat up, beat up and beat up. I will clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up and clean up. Yeah, we'll stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, be counter. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up and glow. Rise up and glow. Through the cracks, but darkness wants to drag you back. Who dictates all the stakes? So while this lights right down through paper rounds, I eat but I can't hold it down. My stomach up, beat up and beat up. I will clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up and clean up. Never stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, be counter. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up and glow. 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 Something that you said, spinning around my head. You said the goodness isn't dead if we believe and act. Do you abide by the law, or do you write your laws? Do you abide by the law, or do you write yours? Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. If you can clear your doubts, you can cure yourself. For your power is a mouse reaching high into the clouds. Do you abide by the law, or do you write your laws? Do you abide by the law, or do you write yours? Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Take some mad, mad man to build up walls and shatter plans. Take some mad, 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 mad man to build up walls and shatter plans. Do you abide by laws? Do you write your laws? Do you abide by laws? Do you write yours? Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on. Get up, get up, get up, get up, just get your love on.
Secretary of State John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, German media reports say, and Mr. Kerry and Hillary Clinton don't like the sound of that. I mean, they don't like being spied on. Themselves, of course. Actually, I mean, I bet if John Kerry was spied on and the results were given to the media, I bet there's a few interesting things we'd find out about him. It's just children's games, basically, tit for tat, like you spied on us, we spied on you. Other news this week, there's been lots of viruses and diseases breaking out, more fear factor. Again, maybe they're going to bring in vaccinations or legislation. This is the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa, which is there's been a lot of fear over that. 1,000 people have died, or I think there were some reports 2,000 in total. But you know, millions of people, or sorry, hundreds of thousands of people die from malaria, but there's not the same media fear spread about that. Or there's far more people that do die in accidents on the road, but this is just being blown up out of proportion. I mean, at some point they may well create a virus that wipes hundreds of thousands of people out, but it won't be because of natural causes, I don't think. The UK paedophile scandal amongst celebrities and political leaders continues, with Cliff Richard being arrested. He's the UK's supposedly squeaky clean Elvis-style pop icon who sold millions of records. He's been investigated on one charge at the moment, connected to a Billy Graham event. But it's likely, if there's no cover-up, that he'll be linked to the Elms Guest House scandal. Apparently he used a false name back in the 80s, I think, where... and this was a guest house where the rich and famous used to go and take advantage of young boys. It's there that MPs, bishops, celebrities committed offences against underage children. And if everything comes out, it could bring down the government if it was all investigated properly. I suspect at least some of it's going to be covered up. But at least it will chip away at people's trust in their leaders, I hope. I wonder if the powers that be are evil enough to try and escalate war in Iraq and other countries and create situations that will lead to people calling for investigations into child abuse to stop, because it will be considered a witch hunt, and you know, they need their leaders to focus on tackling the war. I wonder if that could be a strategy. I think that's the kind of thing they would do. Sometimes listening to what's happening in the world, and it seems to be getting worse and accelerating, it can lead you to despair. But as our guest today, Gareth Icke, said in our interview, the answer is quite simple. People just need to realise that things will not get better until the citizens of the world come together, say enough, and start respecting each other, looking for peace, loving one another. And I'd add to that, take down the system, get rid of the politicians, rebuild it with a new system and something that works. Maybe that part's not quite so simple, but the first part is simple. We need to start just caring about each other, getting together, and I think we need to take this seriously, what's happening. Things are escalating to a serious level, but the masses, the people, have the power. And if we can all just start getting together, start talking to people, to talk to friends, relatives, start spreading the message of peace, truth, justice, love, get people prepared to march if necessary when the time's right, and to stop any wars that they're planning, which I believe they are planning some wars, possibly even World War III. People still have the power if we get together. We're talking about a very small number of people in the world, our world leaders, who could potentially end up destroying it. I mean, how ridiculous would that be, that we just sit by and let them do it? Let's start putting up posters, organising events, speaking to people, writing music, you know, joining groups, wearing t-shirts. That wasn't a deliberate plug for Truth Sentinel t-shirts, although they will be arriving soon. So if you'd like one, let me know. I'll talk about that later anyway. Also, plan B, have a plan of action when things do go wrong, and if we haven't done enough, plan meeting places for when communication systems go down. Get used to living off the land. Think of a safe place that you could go and live. I'm talking about sometime in the future, so I think we've got some time to prepare anyway. Last episode we talked to David Shaler, ex-MI5 whistleblower, and he had a lot of things to say, interesting things to say. Towards the end, he started talking about how he believes he's the Messiah. And I know some people may have found that hard to believe. I believe Gareth's father at one point was also ridiculed for saying he was the son of God. I think maybe his words were taken out of context anyway, but we'll be talking about that later as well. We're going to talk to Gareth Icke about music, politics, the economy, war, news, the rising cost of living, fame, peace. Gareth Icke is a singer-songwriter who writes songs with meaningful lyrics and messages. He's a keen sportsman, and he plays beach soccer, swims, raises money for good causes. He's also the son of David Icke, as I just mentioned. He's involved with some of David's work, such as helping out at the People's Voice, which I believe may have come to an end. I'm not sure. Well, we'll be talking about that in the interview as well. David Icke, Gareth's father, is of course very well known. He's been on Alex Jones. I think Gareth was on one episode as well. David set up People's Voice, has written many books, including The Perception Deception and Remember Who You Are, and Gareth actually wrote a song about that, and Gareth performed at Wembley Arena, where his dad talked for many hours on his life's research about the nature of reality and his interpretation of how everything fits in. It's all connected together, and how we're being manipulated by the powerful few, and I'd be surprised if many people listening disagree with that. I believe that's going to be happening again on October the 25th in Wembley Arena this year in London. I would really like to go to that, and if I'm not abroad, I'm going to try and get a ticket for that. Most people in the UK will know David Icke was ridiculed on Terry Wogan TV chat show. That's how he came into a lot of people's consciousness. He was on the TV before that as a sports presenter, and he was a goalkeeper, I believe, as well before that. I'm just going to go and play a clip from that Terry Wogan TV interview, just so our American listeners know what we're talking about when Gareth and I are talking about that later. At the end of today's episode, I'm also going to play 2 songs by Gareth Icke. Anyway, let's get on. Here's the clip of David Icke on Wogan.
It is imbalance, but it has been increasingly in control. As I repeat, survey the world, ladies and gentlemen. Is the force of love in control of this world, guiding this planet at this time? Of course not. The negativity, the thoughts that I'm talking about that are very destructive, are pouring out of this planet
let me
every
interrupt
day.
you. Was it a great shock for you to discover this at 38?
Well, I think the word is gobsmacked. But again, you know, the best way of removing negativity is to laugh and be joyous. So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
It's fine.
I didn't mean that to be hurtful.
Sure.
I don't want you to misinterpret it. Tidal waves, eruptions, earthquakes.
Well, because of the nature of the way the Earth has been treated over a long period of time, a tremendous amount of energy has built up within the Earth that cannot get out. If it doesn't get out, bang. So this is going to be released in a controlled manner, as controlled as possible, through earthquakes, through volcanoes and such like. If they don't happen, this is not punishment. If they don't happen, there is no...
So David returned many years later and put Terry Wogan in his place, and the audience response was much more favourable, and perhaps showed that there had been a slight shift in attitudes. And now, of course, David Icke commands the attention of many thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And some of those natural disasters he talked about did in fact occur. I was caught up myself in the Asian tsunami when I arrived in Phuket, Thailand, just 4 or 5 hours before the water came in, and the bar I celebrated my arrival in was gone just hours later. It taught me a lot about fate. That was on December the 26th, 2004. Anyway, Gareth, David's son, is now making a name for himself in music. Here's the interview with Gareth Icke. So, hello, Gareth Icke. How are you?
Hello, very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good. Welcome to Truth Sentinel.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Okay, so I typed your name into YouTube just to do a bit of research, and I came up with a video of you trying to put 350 raisins in your mouth. Where you did quite well, but you didn't quite get there. Are there any current attempts to achieve?
Yeah, I used to do a radio show called the G and Tipper Show a few years ago, and we used to try and break world records, ridiculous world records. And I'll tell you, I was about to say I never achieved it. Once I equalled one, which was how many eggs I could hold in one hand.
How many did you get to?
17.
That's pretty impressive.
It's not bad, is it? The technique is to put an egg between each finger and then build from that.
Surely once you've achieved that in life, there's nowhere else to go, though.
Well, that's it, yeah. And I must admit, I've sort of struggled with drinking drugs ever since, just trying to get a high.
That's terrible.
Quite like carrying 17 eggs in one hand.
How'd you beat that? You probably didn't notice my little joke I slipped in there as well, saying, are there any current attempts to achieve that?
Oh! No,
currents, raisins.
Too good for me, mate. Yes. Too good, it's over my head.
I need to practice my jokes a bit better.
No, you just need to make them slightly more child-friendly for me.
Anyway, so thanks for coming on. I wanted to talk first of all about music.
Okay.
As you're in the music world at the moment, yeah? First question, do you think music can change the world in any way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think it can get a message out there and engage more people than standing on a box in a corner of a shopping centre spouting stuff at people would ever do. So I think definitely it can make a difference, and I think emotionally as well it affects people. When they probably don't realise why it does, but it does.
Do you think there's less emphasis on political music or music that has a message these days? Because you get a lot of sort of pop music, say, from sort of Justin Bieber and X Factor and stuff like that doesn't have so much of a message, or there doesn't seem to be as much political music as there did sort of in the 60s or 70s.
I think there probably is. I just think that the major labels won't touch it.
Yeah, you might be right, yeah.
I've sort of turned my back on that side of it. I had a contract, I've had two in my life, and now I'm completely away from it, and I do everything on my own. But when I'm touring, I'd say probably at least half of the bands that I share bills with are politically motivated in their songs.
But they're the ones that don't become so successful then?
Well, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? I mean, I play with bands that literally blow me away sometimes, and I just think to myself, how on earth aren't you ballistic? How are you not on every single radio station across the world? But I generally just don't think the labels will touch it. I don't think that they would even be allowed to, even if they wanted to. It's just kind of fast food, fast music nowadays. Everything's cheap and quick and easily forgotten.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I was looking on Twitter the other day, and Justin Bieber's got one of the highest amount of followers. I think it is the highest actually in the world. I guess there's different markets, isn't there? There's the young sort of teenage girl market where you can become highly successful by appealing to that sort of demographic. Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 17th of August 2014, and my name's Scott. Welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. Today's news. The Russian convoy carrying aid to eastern Ukraine reached the border in the last few days, and there's still allegations that not everything inside it, those lorries, are aid for the people of eastern Ukraine. Remains to be seen what happens next. Islamic militants could target people on the streets of Britain unless action is taken, David Cameron has warned. Sounds to me just, again, trying to scare people so they can introduce maybe some new laws and legislations to take away people's rights. Just keep the fear factor up. Basically, he said that a humanitarian response to IS, or is it ISIL, or is it ISIS? I've seen so many different names, including ISI, I think, as well. Seems to me they're trying to confuse people and trying to make it, distance it from the rebel group that was connected to Al-Qaeda that was attacking Assad's forces in Syria, which the Western powers were actually funding. So there's a clear connection, which I think they're just trying to take away the connection by just changing the name like every couple of days by the looks of it. Anyway, Cameron says a firm security response was needed. So it looks like he's gearing up for a war. I mean, there's so many potential wars that are about to happen that who knows where the major one's going to be. Personally, I'm concerned not about ISIS, IS, ISIL, ISI, or whatever they're called. I'm more worried about what they're planning to do over here with the fear. You know, that it seems that they're actually planning something, and so they're probably planning legislation, or maybe they're going to plan more false flags to get more people involved in wars, so more people die. Listening to the radio today, there's already a fair amount of support for troops going in to Iraq. I was just listening to a popular radio station. Police in Missouri say a man is critically ill after being shot in the street. This was due to protests over the death of Michael Brown, the teenager who was shot by police. They didn't need to kill him, basically. It's a fairly common practice in the US, it seems, at the moment, whereby if you don't do as you're told immediately, that's good enough reason to kill you. So tensions are running high, there's been curfews, now someone else has been killed. You know, and it just shows also, I think, that there's tension in a lot of places across the world, and the idea of uprisings and riots and revolutions, it wouldn't take too much, really, would it? Other news this week, Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency spied on US